It is your Classic Metal Show right here on theclassicmetalshow.com. That's brand new stuff from Operation Mindcrime. The name of the album is The New Reality. The name of that song was Wake Me Up. And here to wake us all up right now is the leader of Operation Mindcrime, the voice of Queensryche, as everybody knows. It is Geoff Tate. Geoff, how are you, man?
Hey, I'm doing good, Chris. How are you?
Excellent, Geoff. Well, Geoff, I got to tell you, I've finally now had the chance to put the whole trilogy through my head. Obviously, it finalizes with the New Reality. And before I talk specifically about this release, I wanted to kind of talk about the whole thing as a single unit just before we break down the new album. And I guess I'll tell you up front, I'm speaking from a bit of a place of ignorance, just because I don't understand your concept, if it is something that is going on now, or if this was you taking a look at what's going on now and projecting what might happen in the future. So why don't we start there and maybe give me a little bit more understanding of where the point of view of this whole process, or this whole global takeover digitally, is coming from.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
What I mean is, listening to it and trying to follow along the process of the three records. Obviously, there's the takeover, not takeover, I guess, but the use of digital currency is what I was picking up as using that as the new power base, or the new ability to take power. And I try to read as much as I can, and it's, and maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I mean, like, as an example, I saw today that Venezuela is launching their own currency, or they're going to try to, that's backed on something on oil instead of gold or other currency. And maybe I'm putting A to B together with your story, and I shouldn't, but it just seems like maybe there are changes in the world that your story was trying to reflect. Am I close or way off?
Chris, the reason why Venezuela is doing that is because they don't have a lot of gold.
Sure.
They have a lot of oil. So that makes a lot of sense. You have what you do have a lot of. You use that as a basis for your currency. With the trilogy, I kind of wrote about things that are interesting to me.
Okay. Things
that I see going on in the world right now, and to my eyes, it's a wonderful, amazing time to be alive, to see what's going on, and there are massive changes going on in the world. If you thought that things were like they were when you were growing up, you'd be completely wrong.
Sure.
Things have radically changed, and they keep changing, and they're changing at a rate, a pace that so far outdoes anything we've ever experienced before. We've invented these amazing ways to communicate now, so we're all communicating at a much higher rate globally than we've ever done before. We're witness to events that are happening simultaneously around the world now, and commenting on them and able to pass judgment on these events, where before our world moved a lot slower. And so it took years for us to assimilate situations and occurrences that were going on. Now we were doing it in a matter of days and hours even. And so that's changing the way we view the world. And the world is changing in the fact that we're making it change. We're exposed to so much change that's going on. And so my story kind of reflects that a lot of people have a hard time with change. They have a hard time realizing and accepting that there's new ways of doing things now, and we have to get ready for that. We have to prepare ourselves. We can't keep expecting to go to the same job every day and collecting our paycheck, because that job is being phased out, absolutely being phased out. Everybody's job is. We're in constant state of change now because we've built this world based upon capitalism.
Sure.
And capitalism, for it to survive, has to change, has to keep making money. It can't just remain stagnant. If it remains stagnant, then the people that have the most invested lose, and they don't like to lose. So it has to keep moving. So therefore, people have to keep educating themselves. They have to keep their eye on what the next job is, what the next thing is in their life that they need to understand. So the way of looking at the world has changed, and is changing. So I called this album The New Reality, because that's kind of where I see things changing radically, is our concept and our perception of what reality is. Okay. It used to be, for example, that it was okay to own somebody.
Right.
Slavery was acceptable. And now we look at it with 21st century eyes and we go, how could that happen?
Right.
Well, that's ridiculous. You can't own somebody. But at one time it was okay. We used to think it was okay and acceptable for women not to be in the workplace. Women weren't able to make decisions, political decisions, business decisions that was outside of their realm of intelligence, we thought. Well, now we look at it with 21st century eyes and we see, well, that's ridiculous. How could people think that? Well, I think that we're going to be saying the same thing about space travel. We're going to be at some point very, very, very close to us. We're going to be saying, why did we use jet fuel to try to get to a planet? We're going to be looking at it that way.
Okay.
This is part of the new reality that we live in. There's lots of social scientists. There's lots of quantum physics scientists who say, look, we've been thinking about this all wrong. Reality is what we make it. And there's no reason why we can't get to Mars just by thinking that, Mm-hmm. To some of us, that sounds completely insane, but to quantum physics, it's perfectly probable,
Sure.
So in my story of the trilogy, a guy invents this product, we'll call it, this algorithm that he turns into a computer program that allows the user of the program to see reality in a whole new way. Now, that is very valuable to some people, and they want a piece of it. And so the majority of my story is based upon real common human nature, is that people oftentimes want what they can't have, and they try to take what they don't have. And there's always a struggle for dominance with human beings. And so without getting into great detail about what the story is, because I like people to find their own way throughout the story, it's a story about humanity and humanity's struggle with the new.
Right. Now, I want to go back to what you said about the capitalism for a minute. Just, do you think that and maybe this is a broader question than that, where do you think we are in that evolution from, I'll say, the 70s or 80s, where capitalism really, exploded, or even earlier than that, the Industrial Revolution, I guess, but versus now, where you're saying that there is a different reality, and when you look at it, you see the people that are in power because of the capital that they've made, whether it's CEOs or heads of corporations or whatever. Right now, it just seems like they're fighting back. I'll use the $15 an hour wage thing as an example. They raise that, and immediately McDonald's is making and producing kiosks to eliminate those positions. So, do you think that we're at a place? Do you think that we're at a place where the people that are in charge, I'll use that term, I guess, are pushing back to where maybe we're at the beginning of a transition? Or do you think that this is just more toward the middle of transitioning into the new reality, and people are fighting with their last gasp to hold on to that old way?
I think that we are in what I'll say looking in the mirror mode, where we are faced with, as a country, I'm speaking strictly for America here, mm-hmm. I think we're at a crossroads where we're looking at ourselves and trying to define who we are as a country. What's our national identity? If you look at the history of America, we're a place where everybody in the world came to so that they could, one, worship the God of their choice and make a lot of money. Mm. Well, those two things really don't add up to a national identity. It sounds like a pretty selfish environment,
Sure.
Really. So capitalism has been our, for the better, use of a better word, I'll say it's been our God, all these years. It's what we built this whole thing around, making money, getting ahead. And the sense of competition that we've instilled in our population is now at a point where, man, we are fighting for our lives. We're fighting for our jobs, for our existence. And we're questioning, well, why should we help out the guy next door, who's maybe down on his luck and needs some health care or something like that? Why should health care be nationalized and be paid for by the whole population, And we're asking those questions. Well, why not? Other countries do it, and it works out perfect for them. They're able to exist. Why is that bad for us? And these are major questions where we're deciding how we want to live and how we are going to live and what is going to be our guidelines. We're drawing lines in the sand, new rules, sexism in the workplace. Who'd ever thought we'd get to this point, But here we are,
sure,
where we're questioning these things. And right or wrong, I don't think that's the question. It's just where we're at, and we need to look at these things and come up with some collective reasoning and some answers. And everybody needs to be part of the discussion. Let's talk about it. Let's not get angry and point fingers. Let's just come up with a new way of looking at stuff and put it into action rather than to cling on to these old-fashioned ideas. I mean, when you think about it, the concept of time, that's a man-made construct. We invented it. Time does not exist. We just made it exist, right? And then we based most of our decisions in everyday life and science concepts and everything around this thing that we invented that we say exists when really it doesn't, So I think we can do anything we set our minds to, and we can come up with any conclusions that we want. Let's just do it in a civil manner, where it makes sense and everybody gets a say-so in it.
Do you believe that?
For instance, like we just recently, we had a communist guy, Bernie Sanders, running for election. Now, that would not have happened in my parents' generation.
Sure,
communists were bad; they were evil. The leaders in America at the time said it. Communism is evil. It's evil, right?
Yeah.
Well, now we got a guy running for office that got a lot of votes, and I bet if he ran, or a communist party guy ran again in the next election, it would be a completely different story. Because once my parents' generation is gone, people are going to have a completely different viewpoint on what communism means or what communist ideals are.
Sure.
They're not going to have the same ideal that my parents had. That's a generation that'll die with them,
Sure. Do you think that the conversation that you are saying needs to happen can actually happen in a civil way, giving the lack of consequence for saying things these days? And I'm pointing specifically to social media, where anybody with a keyboard can say anything they want, and 9 of 10 generally use it in a way that is not productive.
Well, yeah, that's a tricky thing. I think the biggest obstacle we have is lack of education and intelligence. We don't teach that. We don't actually value it publicly in our country. We really celebrate the stupid and the mediocre, and I think that needs to change. And we need to make it so that it is a good thing for people to speak their minds and not feel like they have to hide. And it's like it starts at the very beginning when kids are in school, and now we have anti-bullying legislation. We have that's really prevalent in a lot of school systems around the country. And my gosh, it's like 3 generations late, coming.
Right.
This is something we need to stop at a very early stage in human development. We need people to feel like it's okay to speak their minds, even if they're wrong, or the majority of people see that they're wrong. At least they're saying something that they believe in, and by process of elimination, their ideas will be either assimilated or not. But they shouldn't feel afraid to speak out because they're going to get made fun of. There's a lot of mean-spirited people in the world, and a lot of people that try to take advantage of people who maybe don't have the education or don't have the intelligence. And
right.
That's too bad, but I don't see a way around it. I mean, it's kind of like, the way of the world.
Sure. And the weird thing about it is that you can look even in most people's what I would call most people's recent history, although it's starting to get longer than recent. But when you look at the direct reaction of the American people toward each other right after 9/11, it seemed like everybody came together. Everybody had a common interest, had a common good nature to everybody. Everybody was donating to firefighters and policemen, and everybody kind of had a unified front. And it just seems like, that wasn't that long ago, and now it's like you can't find that at a city council meeting anymore.
Yeah, well, civility is definitely on the wane.
Sure.
And it's too bad, because that's how things really need to be structured in order for things to change. But on the other hand, it's like people have been really pushed pretty far, and tempers are flaring because people feel like they've been taken advantage of.
Sure.
I think, and that's inevitable human nature too. You get pushed too far, and pretty soon you fight back, and maybe you're not the most civil because you lose it.
Right. Sure, definitely. Well, let's move to something a little more upbeat, because this is like, wow, this is like heavy, but something very upbeat, and something that was one of my absolute favorite moments of this entire year was you did some acoustic shows, and you played right here in a town near me called Kent, which I went down to the show, and you did your acoustic rendering of a good amount of the back catalog. It was fantastic. I didn't get to tell you personally, but it was a fantastic show. Very, very enjoyable. And what was really, I guess, most enjoyable to me was that you didn't completely reinvent the wheel, but at the same time, you really did re-engineer the songs and kept them very, very appealing. So, first I wanted to compliment you on that, but I wanted to ask too, how difficult was it to go out and do something like that is not the everyday performance of a Geoff Tate to most people?
Yeah. Well, the toughest part was explaining what it was.
Right.
It's weird. It's something so strange about human nature is that words are very important. And I think one should try to pick the right word for the right situation. But it becomes difficult because, you advertise, well, I'm doing this acoustic presentation, and people immediately think, oh, okay, well, it's Geoff and a guitar, and they're sitting around a campfire, it's kumbaya kind of stuff,
Right.
I don't know why that pops into people's heads, but that's what they think when they
Sure.
hear the word acoustic, And as you can attest, the show wasn't like that at all.
No.
It was very up and big and, probably incredibly loud.
Right.
Yeah, but that was difficult, is to how to explain it to people, to me, it was just really bringing every song I've ever written has been written on acoustic guitar or piano,
mm-hmm.
And then after you get your song fleshed out, you transpose it to different instrumentation. You add drums or put a bass line in here, and you change the guitar line for this, and you add keyboards or whatever you're going to do to it. You add the production on top of that. But the basic song should be something that stands on its own with a voice and a guitar,
mm-hmm.
or voice and a piano. So really, it was just basically bringing the song back to where it began.
Sure. Well, it was definitely, I mean, as a Queensryche fan, and, you know, obviously as a fan of yours, it was very cool to see. And one of my best moment, probably my best live moment of the entire year was when you played Bridge, just because it's my favorite song that you've ever done. And I loved hearing it in that format, just completely stripped down to its essence, almost, you know, even more stripped down than it was on Promised Land in the first place, which it just was a cool moment. And, you know, it was just a unique experience. I think, I mean, I haven't seen that you're planning on doing more of those. Are you?
I'm doing some in Europe
Okay.
this January when my tour starts, doing electric and acoustic shows.
Okay. Excellent. Now, with the touring, that's also, from what I understand, going to be the final hurrah, I guess, of Operation Mindcrime. Is that indeed the case?
Well, Operation Mindcrime, this was put together to present this project that I did, the trilogy, and it was never meant to be a band, and it hasn't been a band. It's been a lot of different people contributing to it on record and live too. This year, when I start touring in January, I start on 11th of January in Dublin, Ireland. I'll be touring. I'm playing it's the 30-year anniversary of the original Operation Mindcrime album.
Sure.
So I'm going to be playing that in its entirety for part of the show, and then the second half of the show will be excerpts from different albums of mine. This is my 18th record.
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
I know. I got a lot of music to pull from, really.
We're starting to get old, Geoff, when you're starting to get into that number of albums that you've sat down and probably spent 6 to 8 months writing and everything else. It really is. It's amazing how much material you have actually written through the years.
Yeah, it's quite daunting actually when I sit down and look at it all and try to figure out, well, what do I want to play this year on tour? Or what do people keep asking me about? You know, a lot of people ask me about old stuff that they've never heard played live before. Mm-hmm. So I've been trying to figure out where the line between old and new meets.
Right. Okay.
And figure out what do they mean by old? Are they talking early 1980s stuff? Are they talking 90s stuff? A lot of people don't know that Queensryche or myself kept making records after 1991.
Right.
So there's a lot of material there that people haven't heard,
Sure. There is now as an artist, Geoff, and I mean, as we're talking, you have done quite a wide array of music. It's got to be frustrating on some level to have exactly that conversation with fans where they come up to you and say, I'm the biggest Queensryche fan ever. I'm the biggest fan of yours ever. And then the last record they know that you did was Promised Land or Empire. That's got to be frustrating for you, who has, created such a, and I'll point from Promised Land on, not only a big collection of music, but a vast collection of music stylistically. You've really explored a lot of territory that maybe you didn't do at the beginning, and it just seems like a lot of people have not explored that, and that's got to be frustrating, no?
Yeah, well, it's challenging, yeah, but also very rewarding too, because I'll have people come up to me, at a meet and greet or something like that at the show, and they go, "Oh my God, I can't believe you played this song." And
sure.
It's a song off one of the later records. I've been always wanting to hear that song and never heard you play it before. Or, on one of the last tours, I played several of the last songs of quite a few records. Typically, for me, I always try to put probably one of the more interesting, esoteric kind of songs at the end of each record,
mm-hmm.
And leave people with something to think about. And so I started playing live the last song on each record for a while.
Wow.
That was kind of fun.
That's funny. That's cool. Nice. Well, Geoff, so with you, I don't know, how am I going to put this? With you ending I'll just say the title Operation Mindcrime, what does that mean going forward? Will you just be Geoff Tate, or are you forming a new band with like a permanent band, or will you be moving on to another project-based type thing, or what's next, I guess?
Well, Chris, I don't have an absolute answer for you.
Okay.
I'm kind of in the transition mode of really not having a musical plan, as far as what I want to do in the future set up right now. I'm kind of liking being, as a sports analogy, kind of a free agent.
Okay.
Able to kind of play with anybody and everybody. And last summer I did several shows with a wonderful German band called Avantasia.
Sure.
I just loved playing with those guys. Great musicians and very prog rock music,
Right.
And just last week I was in Brazil with an incredible band called Angra, playing with them. And I like doing guest appearances with different projects and different groups and that kind of thing. So I'm kind of keeping it loose and open for the rest of the year while I tour.
Sure.
But that being said, I don't know. Something might hit me while I'm on tour,
right?
And send me off in some direction. I don't know.
Do you see a time when you'll ever be like, all right, I've done this enough, and I'm gonna rest on my laurels and retire?
I could do that any day. I could stop any day. I just enjoy it, honestly.
Okay.
I enjoy making new music. I really enjoy touring and traveling. In fact, I really just travel, and then for an excuse as to why I'm traveling, I throw a show in there. That's really kind of my mindset.
Sure, that's your spending money.
So I
right?
don't know. I guess as long as I'm healthy, and I can still do it. I think I'll just keep doing it.
Sure.
Until some point where it doesn't make sense anymore.
Definitely. No doubt, man. Well, Geoff, the new album is called The New Reality. It's a little more progressive than I think people would expect from you. I mean, progressive, like prog rock sounding, I guess. There's a lot of elements in there that, and I guess over the whole trilogy, they're there, but they really, at least to me, jumped out a little more. But it's a great record. People should definitely check it out. And as a tradition on the show, we always let the artist pick a closing song from the record. Maybe tell us a quick story about it. So what would you like us to wrap this one up with?
Oh, wow. Geez.
Hardest question of the day.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Okay. There's a track called "The Fear."
Okay.
Let's play that one. That's one of my favorites on the record, and it's kind of like going back to what we were talking about earlier. When you bring new concepts or new ideas to people, a lot of times they are in disbelief or afraid of something new. And they look upon it as a threat, oftentimes, when it could actually be something that would be incredibly beneficial, to them. But they don't see it that way yet, and sometimes it takes a while for that to sink in and for them to appreciate what it is.
All right, well, let's check it out right now. This is The Fear. It's brand new Operation Mindcrime right here on your Classic Metal Show.